Hello everyone. The hygiene and safety training that you will follow is mandatory for all new entrants. The goal is to educate you and inform you about a set of risks related to the research activity. At the end of this training, you will have to complete a questionnaire. A score of at least 15 out of 20 is required to validate the training. This is important for you because without this validation, access to the lab may be denied. You will be asked to follow the training again. This training is provided by the Prevention Assistants. In the laboratory, we are three to perform this function, said Esa, Sebastian Hutter, and Natalie Wirtz, who is in charge of the NSB3 laboratory. During this training we will discuss various points. Hazards in the laboratory. Training offers available at the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire. The laboratory practices. Life in the laboratory and some rules of its operation. The registers at your disposal. Safety instructions. And we will finish with the validation questionnaire of this training. In the laboratory, there is a set of risks, among which chemical hazard, biological hazard, electrical hazard, fire hazard, and others risk like noise, handling, lasers, radiation, high pressure, cryogenics, asphyxia, screen work, and so on. Note that each risk is symbolized by a pictogram. We will first see the chemical hazard. The first source of information when you want to use a chemical is its label found on its packaging. In this example, that of toluene, you have two different labels for the same product. The label on the left corresponds to the pre-existing regulations. And the right label, to the new European Union regulation, the REACH regulation defined by the ECHA agency. This agency has developed a European regulation to better protect human health. Today, the CLP regulation for classification, labeling and packaging is intended to ensure that the dangers posed by chemical substances are clearly communicated to workers and consumers. This regulation gradually replaces the pre-existing French system still tolerated on the market until 1 June 2017. This new legislation imposes stricter constraints on manufacturers in order to harmonize regulations for all European countries. For these two regulations, we find on the label different information. Danger pictograms, codes consisting of a letter and a number with associated phrases. For the CLP regulation, you can also find the CAS number. Now, we will review all this in detail. Let's start with the danger pictograms. Here are the 7 pictograms of the pre-existing regulations. We find les produits inflammables, corrosive products, explosive products, products harmful to the environment, oxidizing products, those that amplify combustion, toxic products, and finally the irritating or harmful products. Be careful to distinguish the flammable pictogram from the oxidizer pictogram. Here are represented the 10 pictograms for the CLP regulation. They are classified in 3 categories according to the danger. Physical hazards, human health hazards, hazardous to the environment. We find the same pictograms as before. Note that corrosive is in the category physical hazard as well as danger to human health. 2 new pictograms have appeared, pressurized gases and a pictogram symbolizing a health hazard by inhalation. We will detail more thoroughly this pictogram which represents a very particular danger. It corresponds to CMR products and SDOT products. For our example, toluene, with the new regulation, the pictogram health hazard by inhalation was added to that of flammable and harmful. Let's go back now to the codes found on the label. First there is the R phrase for the pre-existing regulation that corresponds to the risk phrase. They are listed from R1 to R68. For the CLP regulation, the risk phrase has been replaced by the hazard statement with H for hazard. Codes are listed from H200 to H413. You can find on these links the meanings of the different codes. If we go back to our example, toluene, there were 6 risk phrases for the pre-existing regulation that we also find in the CLP regulation. The order is however different. For S phrase or P phrase. The S phrases correspond to the phrases S which go from S1 to S64 for the pre-existing regulation. For CLP regulation, we talk about P for precautionary statements that range from P101 to P501. You can find on these links the meanings of the different codes. If we go back to our example, toluene. There are 3 safety phrases that have been grouped together for the precautionary statement for the CLP regulation. But also 4 other precautionary statements were added. This shows that the new legislation is much more complete and accurate. Apart from the label, you can find on the net, like the French website of the Institut National de Recherche et de Sécurité, toxicological sheets on a given product. Take, for example, ethidium bromide. For your search you can put the chemical name of the product you are looking for, but if you make an error of accent or spelling, the search does not succeed. It is best to do this search with a CAS number. This number corresponds to a unique registration number for a given product. It can be found either on the label of the chemical or on Wikipedia. Once the number is entered, you access the toxicological sheet. There you will find, among other things, the pictograms and the precautionary statements for the use of this product. For English speakers, there are 2 websites. That of the European Chemical Agency ECHA, multilingual website, which I have already mentioned before and which is in charge of the development of the CLP regulation. And that of the American website of the NIH, ToxNet. ECHA has a much larger database than ToxNet. If we take again our example of ethidium bromide. The ECHA website is a European website. It uses the pictograms of the CLP regulation. On NIH's US website, ToxNet, toxicology data does not take into account CLP regulation. Regulations are being amended. Which means that at a time when regulations are changing, only ECHA regulations remain in force. In this example, ethanol at the Institut National de Recherche et de Sécurité website is only qualified as flammable. On the ECHA website, 4 other pictograms are mentioned: corrosive, toxic, harmful and a pictogram of health hazard. The focus is on certain effects of ethanol on specific organs, eyes, liver and skin irritant. Apart from these sources of information on a product, the Safety Data Sheet, FDS or SDS, is the best source of information. It's sort of its ID. It always includes these 16 headings, among which very important data in the field of danger and prevention, such as identification of risks, description of first aid measures, precautions for storage, use and handling, exposure control and characteristics of personal protective equipment, stability of the product and reactivity, waste treatment information. Where are these safety data sheets? A simple solution is to go to the intranet website of the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire we are creating. You will find a lot of useful information in terms of health and safety. You have here a section, Chemical Powders and Solvent Room. On this page you can find out where the shared chemicals and solvents are stored. By clicking on Powder List, you arrive on a page where are listed all the chemicals available in the 4 cabinets of this room. You can then download the material safety data sheet for your chemical by clicking on FDS. If your product is not listed, you can download your SDS from the supplier. All suppliers are obliged to provide the safety data sheet for their products, either in paper form, or available on their website. Here for example beta-mercaptoethanol sold by Sigma. By visiting the Sigma Aldrich supplier website, you search using the product name or its reference. You will have SDS icons for safety data sheet. By clicking on SDS, you download the French safety data sheet. You can also change language. You can check if it complies with the European CLP regulations. When you have to work with toxic products, know that you have protective equipment that will protect you but also your colleagues and the environment. There are of two kinds. Fume cupboards that expulse the air outside. These devices are connected to the roof level for the expulsion of air. The extractor hoods with air recirculation are more interesting as they are mobile, easy to install, with no need for connection. They are equipped with a specific filter to filter the air before discharging it into the room. Of course, before any use, it is important to check that the extractor hood is running, that the level of the glass is suitable for optimal protection and avoid cluttering the extractor hood. Under no circumstances can a biological safety cabinets or BSC protect you from the vapors of chemicals or solvents. The BSC are equipped with particles HEPA filter, to work in sterile conditions while protecting the user and the environment from dangerous microorganisms. In this slide, you have the location of the fume cupboards and ETRAF extractor hoods on the different floors of the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire. Once you have finished your manipulations, whether it is RNA, DNA extraction or solvent handling, you have generated chemical waste that must not be disposed of in the sink. In the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire, we have everything that we need to eliminate these chemical wastes. Specialized companies evacuate and treat them every week. The only thing we ask you is to respect the sorting of your waste. You have at your disposal different kinds of canisters depending on the nature of the chemical waste. Here is the sorting present at the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire with some examples. Waste containing halogenated or non-halogenated solvents with some examples. Waste containing concentrated acids or bases with some examples. Waste containing heavy metals or low calorific liquids with some examples. This slide makes you aware of certain incompatibilities between chemicals for their storage. For example, a flammable is not to be stored with an oxidizer, the oxidant product amplifying the ignition phenomenon. A corrosive product should not be stored with a health hazard product. A corrosive product can attack the metals of the packaging. Let's go back now to the chemicals labeled health hazard, CMR. CMR for carcinogenic, mutagenic, and reprotoxic. They are also known as genotoxic products because they can compromise the physical or functional integrity of the genome. They are divided into three categories according to the veracity of the risk. Category 1 Proven risk. Category 2 Presumed risk. And Category 3 Risk suspected. You will find in this table the risk phrases or hazard statements of the products concerned and some examples. Unfortunately, we can see that many of these products are familiar to us such as acrylamide, iodoostamide, formaldehyde. All channels of exposure and transmission are concerned, especially since even the respiratory tract by inhalation is concerned. In addition, the effect of these products can be cumulative, that is to say that the toxicity can appear over time, after several small dose manipulations. Here are some preventive measures. Supply in small units. Stock inventory. Learn about the risks of these products. Limit to the places of manipulation dedicated to these products. Use the means of personal and collective protection. Let's talk about a particular product, ethidium bromide. Ethidium bromide is a fluorescent dye used in molecular biology for its intercalating properties to visualize DNA. It is a mutagenic agent. Therefore, it is imperative to use it in a dedicated room with dedicated equipment for its use and with the appropriate personal protective equipment. In the laboratory, a substitute product has been introduced, the CyberSafe. Although it is specified as non-toxic on its safety data sheet, the lack of hindsight on its use makes that one uses the same precautions of uses for ethidium bromide. So the use of CyberSafe requires a specific extraction hood which contains all the material to make your gels. For waste generated with these CMR products, whether they be solid like gel, gloves, paper, or liquids like gel migration buffer, all this waste is to be disposed of in specific containers. For liquids, cans clearly specifying contaminated waste ethidium bromide. For solid waste, 30-liter buckets. And in no-CAS, household trash or yellow container for biological waste. Now, let's talk about the individual exposure to chemical hazards and toxic substances sheet. It has been made compulsory since 2001. It is in everyone's interest to fill it out and keep it in order to claim recognition of occupational diseases. It aims to identify annually those exposed to dangerous chemicals. Who is concerned? Anyone exposed during the preparation and handling of hazardous chemicals. Who is it for? Employer, manipulator, working doctor, infirm. Who is it for? The exposed person with the help of the prevention assistant. Who fills it? When do you fill it? Each year on the occasion of the risk assessment. Updated with any modification of the technology that may affect exposure to hazardous chemicals and preparations. The products concerned are carcinogenic, mutagenic and reprotoxic, toxic, corrosive and irritating products. Here are the R-risk phrases. Or mention of danger H of the products concerned. You can find this individual exposure to chemical hazards and toxic substances sheet on the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire Internet website. You have here a section, Individual Exposure to Chemical Hazards and Toxic Substances sheet. On this page you can download the form to complete and the associated instructions. The form is an Excel file that contains 2 sheets including a list of several hazardous chemicals and their classification to help you fill out the form. In the second sheet, you will find different products, their CAS number and CMR category. They are. We will see very briefly the biological risk. Very briefly, because this risk will be the subject of a specific training provided by Natalie Wirtz and Muriel Militello. What you need to know is that biological risk is the major risk in a microbiology lab like our. Among biological agents we find bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungi and unconventional transmissible agents. They are classified into 4 categories ranging from 1 to 4 according to the risk they present for the worker, from 0 to high. Depending on the risk they present for the near or outside environment, it ranges from 0 to high. According to whether there is a prophylaxis or a treatment, so according to the categories, there is either possibility of treatment or no treatment available. So for the different categories, we will work in the laboratory of the corresponding biosafety level, so Class 2 in Biosafety Level 2, Class 3 in Biosafety Level 3. Class 4 biological agents are therefore more pathogenic than Class 1 biological agents. Here, you will have to work with biological agents, so you will be invited to follow the basic training Biosafety Level 2 and good laboratory practices. And depending on your research project, you may need to take further training, Biosafety Level 3. This training will be requested by your supervisor and scheduled with Natalie Wirtz. As with chemicals, there are rules for the disposal of biological waste. In no case can they be disposed of in an ordinary trash bin. This is called DASRI and corresponds to infectious medical waste. Containers are colored in yellow to indicate danger. For sharp objects such as blades, syringes with needles, scalpels, we use the rigid plastic containers. For other waste such as culture boxes, tubes, compresses, gloves, we use the 25 or 50 liters cardboard containers, noted DASRI with the biological hazard pictogram. In both cases, pay attention to liquids and pay attention to the height of these containers because they have secure closing devices. Of course, they must not be confused with non-hazardous waste to be treated like domestic waste. The white or transparent bag corresponds to domestic waste. For a laboratory, the cost of eliminating DASRI is very high, about 3.5 times higher than that of domestic waste. So be careful when you throw garbage. Avoid throwing uncontaminated objects into the yellow DASRI containers. For biological waste in liquid form, this will be repeated in more detail during the training Biosafety Level 2 and Good Laboratory Practices, but you will need to decontaminate them. Currently, in the laboratory, we use Aniax Twin. Attention, this product is active only 48 hours after dilution. When diluting Aniax Twin, you must use personal protective equipment, this is mandatory. Aniax Twin is corrosive and oxidizing. If necessary, bleach can be used but outside the biological safety cabinets. In the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire, a room to store your chemical waste is located on the first floor, and on the second floor, signage is in progress. You will also find there all the empty containers carrying the labels of the different types of waste. It is imperative to respect the sorting of your waste during the commissioning of a canister to avoid problems of incompatibility. These chemical wastes are evacuated for destruction by specialized companies. For biological waste, DASRI, or ordinary waste, DAOM, you can store them in the following two rooms. First floor, dirty linen room whose signage is in progress. Second floor, waste room. Specialized companies take care of evacuating them for destruction. It is also in these rooms that you will find empty containers. In the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire, you have two rooms on the second floor at your disposal, Reserve 201 and Locala Solvents. In the solvent room, you have two ventilated cabinets for solvents, one reserved for mass spectrometry, and one ventilated acid and base cabinet. A fume cupboard is also at your disposal to sample solvent, acid or base. This fume cupboard operates permanently in low flow. The other room on the second floor is the Reserve 201. In its four cabinets, you will find shared chemical products arranged in alphabetical order. Two scales including a precision scale are also at your disposal to weigh on the spot the chemicals. You are simply asked to return the products to their locations so that other users can find them, and also clean the scale and anti-vibration table. If you need chemical powders or solvents, you must request access to these two rooms. On the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire internet website, click on Solvent and Chemical Powder Room. On this page, download the PDF file. Then complete and have signed by Professor Bernard Lascola, at the Work in Progress core example. Frank Filosa will then give you access to these rooms. On these two blueprints of first and the second floor, you have the location of some important rooms. DASRI Waste Room and DAOM in blue. Chemical Waste Room in green. Locala Solvents and Reserve 201 in purple. We will now discuss the electrical risk. In the laboratory, we have equipment that operates with 220 volts but also more demanding equipment operating with 380 volts. The electrical risk is due to a direct or indirect contact with the electric current. Its consequences can be numerous: fire, explosion, or damage to human health. It can range from a simple burn to electrocution. To prevent these consequences, there are some basic precautions to take. Do not overload outlets by multiple mountings. Only use devices in good condition. Never touch a plug with wet hands. You should know that a buffer is much more conductive than water. Never reset a circuit breaker. If it has short-circuited, it is for a reason, so report it to the technical service. Never practice technical intervention on a device with a malfunction. Here again, report it to the qualified staff. Never change the sensitivity of a circuit breaker in order to use a device. We will now discuss the fire risk. Fires can be caused by poor storage of chemicals, improper handling of flammable products, or electrical problems. The main rules if one is confronted to a fire start are the following ones. First of all, the first rule is to never put your life in danger. Keep calm and take action. If you are working on manipulations, secure your work so that it does not increase the risk of fire. Notify emergency services, answer questions, especially do not hang up without being asked. Trigger the alarm, warn your coworkers, and if you feel capable, start fighting the fire with fire extinguishers that are available to you. There are 5 classes of fire depending on the type of fire. Class A solid materials fire. Class B liquid fires. Class C gas fires. Class D metal fires. Class F domestic fires. To extinguish these different classes of fire, there are 5 types of extinguishers: water spray, water plus additive, powder, CO2 and foam. In the laboratory, you will find these 2 types of extinguishers: water extinguishers plus additive and CO2 extinguishers. This table shows you the instructions for use for each fire extinguisher. Here is an example of an evacuation plan. The evacuation plan is posted on each floor. It indicates where fire extinguishers and stairs are. When the building fire alarm sounds, you must leave the laboratory. Secure your handling, close doors, windows if necessary, and calmly head for the exit without taking the elevator. Follow the itinerary indicated by this pictogram until the meeting point, symbolized by this pictogram. Now let's go over the other risks. We will first address the laser risk. In a laboratory, many devices are equipped with laser like the confocal microscope, the fluorescence scanner, the flow cytometer, the mass spectrometer. They are divided into 5 classes depending on the power of the laser and the risks associated with a malfunction or misuse of a laser. The consequences range from eye damage due to direct or indirect reflections, to burning or fire. Prevention against laser risk is implemented by technical means at the device level with restricted access and use subject to specific training. For the individual authorized to intervene on such equipment, means of individual protection exist and are necessary. Now let's talk about the risks of asphyxiation and the risks associated with pressure vessels and cryogenics. These 3 risks have one thing in common: gas releases. In the laboratory, we can find CO2 bottles, for cell culture for example, but also nitrogen, helium, argon, liquid nitrogen tanks, dry ice often received with the products ordered. These gas sources, in a confined space or with insufficient ventilation, can cause incidents with very serious consequences. The consequences of these risks are numerous. The risks of asphyxiation, including anoxia, coma and death, due to the decrease of oxygen in the air. By way of example, 1 liter of liquid nitrogen generates 700 liters. The risks of propulsion of gas cylinders due to improper handling or storage. You should know that a bottle contains 200 bars of pressure. The handling of dry ice or liquid nitrogen can cause burns. The temperature of liquid nitrogen -196 degrees Celsius. Prevention measures must therefore be respected. Ensure good ventilation and the presence of a C02 or Noxic detector in the room with a gas source. If the alarm sounds, turn off the gas supply at the tap. Open the doors to ventilate. Evacuate places by warning your coworkers to do the same. Call the security PC at 04-1373-2018 at any time to report the incident. The gas cylinders are handled by competent personnel with appropriate trolleys and stored with a chain. For the handling of liquid nitrogen, means of protection for the hands and the eyes are obligatory. Storage in a confined space is strictly forbidden. The Institut Hospitalo Universitaire Méditerranée Infection offers a large training offer. It's interesting for you because it can be a plus in your curriculum vitae. Some courses are required to access certain platforms, to use certain devices. All this depends on your research project. Do not hesitate to consult the training booklet and discuss it with your supervisor. A certificate of follow-up training will be delivered to you. These courses could also be an opportunity to add value to your stay or expand your knowledge. Here are grouped the training required to access the different platforms. By scanning the QR codes you can download the training booklet or access the doodle to register for the training. To scan the QR codes, here are the links to download the applications for your smartphone. Whatever your project, 2 basic courses are required, HSSQ that you are following and Basic Training Biosafety Level 2 and Good Laboratory Practices. Different safety and biological safety trainings depending on your research project if you work with Class 3 pathogens. The training Identification of Microorganisms by MALDI-TOF will train you since the deposit of your samples and the use of the machine until the production of the spectra, the analysis and the interpretation of the results. The molecular biology course will cover all the techniques of gene analysis, from DNA gel to quantitative PCR and sequencing. The flow cytometry training will involve several levels of training, from the principle of cytometry, to quantification, phenotyping and cell sorting. The bioinformatics training will offer you access to all the possibilities offered by this powerful tool. Other training provided externally by your supervisory bodies can be provided according to your project, for example use of animals. Now let's talk about good practices in the laboratory. Also known as GLP. These rules are designed to guarantee your safety and the quality of your experiments. Firstly, let's take a look at some general guidelines. It is forbidden to smoke, drink, eat, put on makeup, or store food in a laboratory. Do not use mouth pipetting, even water. Pipetting devices are available. Do not pick up the phone or open a door with gloves. If you use gloves, it is for a reason. To allow rapid evacuation in CSA of fire, do not clutter the corridors, stairs and fire door. As we saw previously, it is forbidden to intervene on the electrical equipment. When you leave the laboratory, disinfect your hands. It is not recommended to wash your blouse at home. The slightest injury is to be treated. You work in an environment that can be infectious. A medicine cabinet is available in different place. Record any incidents or malfunctions in the Health and Safety Register. We will cover this in more detail. For the good of all, you must respect the rules of good laboratory practices in the organization of your work. Do not undertake dangerous manipulations beyond normal working hours. If anything happens to you, you could not ask for help. Use personal protective equipment and tie your hair. Appropriate collective protection equipment is at your disposal for your safety and that of other personnel. If possible, use the least dangerous products. Before using a product, Read its safety data sheet. If you have to make solutions, correctly identify the bottle, composition, name and date. Respect the storage rules of chemicals. If possible, use disposable equipment, otherwise you are responsible for the washing up. Before any manipulation, clean your worktop, and also at the end of your manipulations, as well as the material in common. Respect the chemical or biological waste streams. Do not dispose of anything into the sink that could cause explosion, bad smell. The needles remain on their syringes and never is a needle recapped. Use the appropriate containers to eliminate them. Evacuate and let the competent people act in case of massive chemical dispersion. Let's take a look at the risks associated with the use of hazardous products. If you work with genotoxic products, you must indicate it to the occupational doctor during your visit. In the event of an incident with these products, make a statement to the doctor and record it in the Health and Safety Register. It is forbidden to handle carcinogenic products during your pregnancy. It must be declared immediately. As mentioned above, the products are locked up and used in small quantities. Use appropriate personal and collective protective equipment, and follow the specific pathways for waste disposal. The laboratory is a living space governed by rules ensuring optimal functioning. The laboratory has EcoFrac accreditation for the analysis of intracellular bacteria, such as Rickettsia, Bartonella, Coxiella. This diagnostic is performed at the level of the top ground floor of the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire. The equipment and space dedicated to this activity are subject to regular audits to verify compliance. You will not be brought to perform manipulations in this area, unless authorized by the care and diagnosis staff. In this case, you must respect good laboratory practices, use strict procedures, and respect the use of these calibrated materials. The stocks of consumables and reagents at your disposal are the responsibility of Michel Estel. When using common reagents or consumables, you must retrieve the label or number under the barcode and place it on Michel Estel's desk. So by scanning the label or entering the number, the stock is immediately updated. An alert threshold thus makes it possible to avoid stock shortage. For cold banks, spaces at 4 degrees Celsius, -20, -80, -150 degrees Celsius will be allocated by Majdi Benasua, according to your needs. There is also possibility to have liquid nitrogen if necessary. You will be asked to respect the storage instructions. Identify your boxes of storage well. Use personal protective equipment PPE at your disposal. Several autoclaves are installed at the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire. These devices are handled only by personnel with an autoclave clearance. If you wish to have your equipment sterilized, drop it at Laundry 002 on the top floor. 2 autoclave cycles take place in the morning depending on whether it is solid or liquid medium. Do not forget to write down your name, date and what storage after autoclave. You will find, in the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire, several media of diffusion of information relating to the hygiene and safety. The health and safety general information panels are posted near the lifts and in the break rooms. On the doors of the laboratories, you will find specific health and safety signs with hazard pictograms, protective equipment and mandatory training to access these rooms. Hygiene and safety referents have been appointed in each laboratory. Within the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire you will find different registers, each having a very specific role. The first one. Outside business hours, it is mandatory to sign up on the entry-exit register placed at the security office at the entrance of the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire. This register will allow security guards to know precisely the location of people in the building in case of an incident to help them. The second one. The Health and Safety Register is located on the fourth floor of the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire. Anyone can use this register to record their observations, suggestions for the prevention and improvement of working conditions. Any situation that could affect the person or his health can be notified. Any accident, incident or malfunction must be declared by identifying yourself and specifying the place, the circumstances and the follow-up to be given. The laboratory manager regularly consults the register and is responsible for answering questions and making the necessary arrangements to improve prevention. We will now discuss the safety instructions to be followed in the event of an incident. Several medicine cabinets are available in the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire. Remember their location so you did not waste time when you will need them. Let's look at a particular case. The AES or accident of exposure to blood. This is a risk that may affect you if you are going to work with material of human origin and therefore potentially carrier of infectious agent. The AES is due to direct contact with blood, a biological fluid containing blood or potentially contaminated by blood, during a puncture, cut, contact on an injured skin or a projection. A very precise procedure has been put in place to guarantee rapid care in order to limit health risks. It is important to react immediately. Here are the urgent first aid measures. In case of puncture, cut or damaged skin, do not make the wound bleed. Clean the area immediately with soap and water and rinse. Disinfect for at least 5 minutes with a chlorinated derivative, Dakin or bleach, or with alcohol. In case of projection on mucous membranes, especially the eyes, rinse with a saline solution or water for 5 minutes. Then, it is necessary to take a medical opinion in the hour following the AES to evaluate the risk by the fastest medical advice possible. And search for the serological and bacteriological status of the patient's source. Within 24 hours after the AES, it is important to report the accident as well as inform your superiors and the occupational doctor. The doctor referring to the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire for medical and biological monitoring is Professor Philippe Bruqui. In the event of an incident, call the security office, dial 32018 from an internal telephone in the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire. From a mobile phone, dial low 413 73 2018. If you must evacuate, follow the instructions provided by the evacuation plan and join the meeting point. Several security devices are present in the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire and identifiable with their green color. In case of power failure, use the emergency opening, and in case of chemical or thermal burns, use these portable showers. Spot them before you need them. Here are some useful phone numbers in the event of an incident. If you are calling from a mobile phone, dial the number directly in red or black. If you are calling from an Institut Hospitalo Universitaire telephone, dial 02 exit and dial the complete number. If you are calling from an Institut Hospitalo Universitaire telephone and wish to reach the technical service or security office, dial only the numbers in parentheses. Do not forget to inform the secretaries. To validate your training, you must answer a questionnaire accessible through these links and obtain a mark above 15 out of 20. The internet link can only be accessed from an Institut Hospitalo Universitaire computer. The Google link is accessible from any computer or smartphone. If you have a smartphone with an application reading QR codes, you can access the questionnaire by scanning this code. Following the internet link, you will be redirected to the HSSQ website of the Institut Hospitalo Universitaire. Click on the questionnaire menu in the left column. The questionnaire page opens. To access the form, click on the word questionnaire. Identify yourself as precisely as possible and answer the questions. Do not delay answering the questionnaire to obtain your laboratory accreditation. That's it, the hygiene and safety training is over. You just have to validate by answering the questionnaire. Thank you for your attention. We hope to have made you aware of the risks associated with the research activity. The entire health and safety team within the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire is at your disposal if you have any questions. Bernard Lascola, Director of this group. Christian Deveau, Head of the Platforms. Said Issa, Natalie Wirtz and Sebastian Hutter, the 3 Prevention Assistants. Muriel Militello, Biosafety Level 2 and Good Laboratory Practice Training Manager. And finally CARE, Lawrence Thomas and Richard Salasha, Quality Managers of Public Assistance. Have a good and safe stay at the Institut Hospitalo-Universitaire.